tropical system that is meandering towards Florida is causing quite the turbulence in the Gulf of Mexico. And we're getting rain bands from it right now. I don't know how much wind we'll get, but it's supposed to be a major rain issue, especially for South Florida. And as far as how much it'll impact my area, it is yet to be seen, but we're dealing with it. I did manage to get out, I'm starting to get out Christmas stuff. We decorate our yard up big time for Christmas. My wife is really into it, and I am too. So I got everything kind of staged over the weekend. But once we're got it up with it, I'll show you some pictures when the time's come. But we got a great show for you today. We're going to start with these 39 congressmen and women, congressmen, have issued a letter, written a letter to Attorney General Barr asking him, what the heck basically are you doing, and are you going to intercede here in the integrity of the vote? We'll talk about the letter and all things about the election here in just a moment. And then Biden, of course, he's acting as if he's already the president-elect, and we'll talk about all of that and what it may or may not mean. But he's come out now and said that he's going to call for mandatory masks around the United States, and if you don't do it, he's going to get the governors to do it, and if they don't do it, he's going to get the mayors to do it, and maybe even the dog catcher, but we'll talk about that. Before we go any further, I got to mention our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited, otherwise known as BDU. They make the show possible. We're in Big Daddy Unlimited studios every day, Monday through Friday at 8 Eastern Time, or as close as we can to it, across Facebook, YouTube. Spell out John Martin Talks. You'll check that out. We're on our YouTube page. We're also streaming not only on Facebook for America's Voice News. Good morning, howdy. How are you guys out there? But we're streamed on their streaming service as a late night show. You can download the free app on your Android, your iPhone, Apple TV, Fire Stick, Roku, Channel 219, Dish Network, and the Pluto channel. And we're growing every single day. And by the way, they're the best place, America's Voice News, to check out anything to do with Donald Trump or anything beyond fake news. And before we get any deeper, let me speak about that very quickly. I've been noticing over Facebook that people are abandoning it, or at least threatening to, and they're going to different things like Parler. We're investigating all that. I know that there millions of people flooded that system over the weekend, and we'll most likely be a part of that as well. But one thing that is becoming abundantly clear is that with this election, or the fiasco that is still going on, that us conservative folks, especially if you're a Trump supporter, we don't really have many friends in the media, including, by the way, Fox News, because a lot of people are using that, saying abandon Fox News. Well, we're working on that right here at John Martin Talks. We're working on that with Big Daddy Unlimited. We're going to give you some alternatives in the coming days, weeks, and even months to what you've been seeing on social media. And so just stay tuned. But that's another reason why we need your help. Go to our sponsor, Big Daddy Unlimited. The way to see that is no matter when or where you're watching the video, check out the description above the video. You'll see a sponsorship link to Big Daddy Unlimited, where you'll get factory direct pricing on anything Second Amendment, guns, ammunition, swag, tactical gear, literally thousands of items shipped directly to your door. Check it out. All right, let's get on with it. We're going to start with a story from Breitbart. 39 House Republicans asked Bill Barr to ensure integrity of voting and counting process. Bill Barr, of course, the Attorney General, which has so far been silent on this. Now, I've heard mixed things about why. Supposedly there is, and I don't know if this is absolutely true or not. I tried to look it up this morning and could not find the information on it. So maybe some of you listeners out there could help me. But apparently, at least I've heard that there is a certain time frame after the election when the Department of Justice can actually get involved. But I'm hoping that time is now, because we need all the help we can get. More than 36 House Republicans, including House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Biggs, Republican of Arizona, penned a letter Friday to Attorney General William Barr asking him what he is doing to ensure the integrity of the 2020 presidential election amid allegations of irregularities. That's putting it pretty mildly. That's a good question. But is he doing anything? Is he going to do anything? And there's another question out there that I don't really enjoy bringing up. I mentioned it a little bit on Friday. You can always check out our podcast along the various platforms I told you before. One of the best ways is check out our YouTube channel, John Martin Talks. We also have a Twitter, by the way. So does my psychic sidekick here, Billy Bob Bass. If you're new to the show, first of all, welcome. Howdy, how are you? He kind of keeps me straight here. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. And we got our shows archived as there as well. But it's a good question about whether or not Barr will actually get involved in what he's actually doing or not doing right now. But a question I asked on Friday, and I don't really relish asking that, is it too late? Is it too late? Because one thing we may have to face the facts of, and trust me, let me caveat that by saying I'm all for fighting to the end, bitter, good, joy, whatever. And we're going to talk specifically about that in just a moment. But I'm 100% for Donald Trump sticking this thing out for himself and for all those, almost 72 million they're saying now that support him. Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, of course, they're talking about Biden getting more votes than anybody else, and he did. He got more votes than Obama, 8 million more votes than Obama. I still have that hard to believe, and maybe we'll talk about that. But what they're not mentioning is, guess who else got more votes than Obama? And that is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, in this election, got more votes than any other president in the history of the United States of America running for re-election or winning election. More than any other president in the history of the United States. Let that soak in. Because Joe Biden, you can say, okay, he got more, but he ain't president yet. And he might not make it there. So, keep that in mind. But you cannot deny the impact that Donald Trump had on election day, his supporters had, and what he's had over the last 4 years. But I ask again, is it too late? Because one of the things I said on Friday, and as I say, I just got to call it as I see it. I do believe there's some culpability in this sham election, in these fraudulent votes that are and we'll get into the details of what I think about that in just a moment. But I think there's culpability on the Republican side. And yes, the Trump administration, Congress, there's plenty of blame to go around. And the reason I say that is because I do believe, and I mentioned it at the time, that they should have been prepared for what everybody knew was coming on election day, and that is this cheat by mail deal. And there were rules and regulations in place beforehand on elections, because keep in mind, every state has a different little bit of rules and regulations. It's 50 basically state elections, not one big national election. And everybody has slightly different rules. But the one thing they all have in common is that the U.S. Constitution says pretty specifically that state legislatures are to pass the election laws of that state. And that's extremely important, because I firmly believe that any rules or regulations like the cheat by mail, if they were done in Pennsylvania, and we'll talk about it more specifically in a moment, is a classic example of this. If they were passed outside the legislative process, then by their very nature, they are unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court may take that up. They're talking about taking it up with Pennsylvania. I believe they will take it up. What will happen is anybody's guess, really. The one thing about the Supreme Court, it's hard to imagine exactly what they're going to do, because we've been disappointed before. Now, we got Amy Coney Barrett there. I'm not judging her. I think she will do the right thing. But at one point, I thought John Roberts would, and we know where that's been, right? So is it too late? And I say that because I do believe the Trump administration dropped the ball a little bit on challenging these things early on. It's a lot easier to challenge the vote before it comes in than after, period. It just is. And if for instance, the U.S. Constitution is upheld and the Supreme Court rules that all these changes are unconstitutional, keep in mind, it could literally affect millions of ballots, votes, however you want to label them. Millions, not just a few thousand, but millions. And is the Supreme Court going to actually do that? I don't know. We'll find out. They should, but they don't always do what they should. So I do believe that the Republican Party and the Trump administration and members of Congress, including governors and state legislatures, dropped the ball on not challenging this from the beginning, because the Democrats were all in back in the spring, and they used this pandemic to plan the stealing. What's happening in our election today is not by accident. It was planned out and well executed by the Democratic Party. So I'm just telling you like it is. But here, let's get back to this article and the letter from these 39 congressmen. We're not going to read the whole letter. I'll probably post it up on my Facebook page. But the letter said, while each state runs its own election process, kind of what I was just talking about, the United States Department of Justice is ultimately responsible for the integrity of federal elections. True. The American people must have the utmost confidence that the outcome of the presidential election is legitimate. And that is absolutely true. Right now, if these results hold true, basically 70 million people plus are not going to feel it's legitimate. And there is no mandate, no matter how this thing turns out, for Joe Biden. There really isn't. If anything, there'd be more of a mandate for Donald Trump, because he got more votes than anybody ever has on election day. And I think that's very important. But Matt Gaetz, who is a congressman from the Panhandle region of the state of Florida, and I'm sure you've seen him. He's on Fox News quite a bit. He is a rising star in the Democratic Party and may in fact be governor and potentially presidential material at some point. But he was on a show on Fox News over the weekend, and I want to play this video from him because I think he sums it up very well, why we need to have what I call an audit or validation of the vote. Recount is not enough. A recount just simply recounts the existing ballots. We need to have an audit. We deserve an audit, a validation of the ballots themselves, whether or not they're actually came in on time, whether or not signatures are right, whether the people are actually alive, whether people doubly voted, those kind of things. We need to have that. And Matt Gaetz, I think, sums it up in about a minute better than I could about why it's so important that win, lose, or draw with Donald Trump, and he's a big Trump supporter, that we need to have this audit happen. Check it out.
If there are machines that were used in a number of states that were switching votes, that would be deeply problematic. And similarly, if you have people who are no longer residents of a state voting in that state, it's a challenge. But look, Steve, we've got to remember Donald Trump has built a great Republican Party. It's a party that is doing better with Hispanics and African Americans than it has in a generation. And Donald Trump now has an obligation to the party that he built to ensure that we expose and litigate every true example of fraud, because if we don't do that, we'll never win another election again. Democrats spent 4 years delegitimizing this president. They wouldn't go to his inauguration. Some wouldn't attend his State of the Union, and I thought that was classless. If this election doesn't go our way, we're not going to burn anything down. We're going to litigate before courts, and only when the courts have made a decision will we have a legitimate president. And I hope Republicans don't behave the way Democrats did these last 4 years. If it's not precisely what we would have sought, I think we've got to build on the great party that Donald Trump has created for us, and he remains the most powerful, most influential Republican in America.
Amen. Amen. Boy, he really spelled it out there. Donald Trump, I mean, he's done a lot. Don't get me wrong. When I say I agree with Matt Gaetz that he owes us, in a sense, he owes the Republican Party, which I think Matt Gaetz said it really well, that he built. Keep in mind, this Republican Party is a winning Republican Party. It overcame the blue wave in 2018 to defeat Bill Nelson here in the state of Florida and elect Mr. DeSantis, our great governor in the state of Florida. We elected two senators now from the state of Florida, Republican, overturned in the case of Bill Nelson, like a 20-some year incumbent. It was really tough to do, but Rick Scott did it. So this Republican, and I think if Florida is a kind of, I hate to say Florida microcosm because everything here is pretty big, but I think if you look at the coalition of voters that Donald Trump put together in Florida to actually have more of an impact in the 2020 election than he even did in 2016. That is the future if the Republican Party is smart, Donald Trump or not. That is the future of the Republican Party if we want to be successful. And Matt Gaetz is 100% right. Let me bring out a couple of other things because I've heard some Republicans chiming in about the president. Of course, Mitt Romney, I hate to even bring him up, but of course, he's going to be, especially if Biden is successful, Mitt Romney, be ready to hear from him on a daily basis. They're going to put Mitt Romney up as the spokesperson for the conservative movement. The Biden people are in the news media. They're not going to get enough of that guy. I've had enough of him for a long time, but trust me, that is one reason why we need to get Donald Trump back up there, because if not, Mitt Romney is going to be somewhat, certainly with the mainstream prejudice media, they're going to be using him. But Mitt Romney said that the election was basically a validation of conservative principles and a repudiation to a certain extent of Donald Trump. That is absolutely not true. Now, the conservative principle part might be, but if you look at it, they're taking House seats. The Republican Party is still gaining House seats as we speak. Looks like they're going to hold on to the Senate based on what may or may not happen in Georgia. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But check this out. This is getting very little publicity. How many governorships that were held by Republicans were lost during the 2020? Do you know the answer? 0, baby. Not one governorship changed hands. How many state legislative bodies flipped from Republican to Democrat? How many? 0, baby. All because of Donald Trump. So if you have a political job out there right now in the Republican Party, if you are a Republican office holder, you owe a great deal of gratitude to none other than Donald Trump. And then the thing I really want to touch on is this thing with Bush. Bush W came out and congratulated Mr. Biden for winning. Bush should have kept his mouth shut. I have very little respect for the Bush family. I used to have quite a bit. I got very little, if any, now. If anybody should have kept their mouth shut, it is George W. Bush. Because George W. Bush, if the media would have had their way, if it weren't for the Supreme Court, we wouldn't be talking about George W. Bush other than the fact that he lost to Al Gore. Now, I'm not saying he did, but if it was up to the mainstream media, which is basically declared Donald Trump a loser, if it was up to the media, Bush would have never been president. And let me ask you, all this idea of, President Trump should have conceded, he should do the right thing for the American people and everything else, he should concede. Let me ask you a question out there, snowflakes. Can you tell me on what date after the November election that Al Gore actually conceded? Now, he conceded the night of the election, but he changed his mind, right? And he held on for a few days. What was the date of Al Gore's concession speech in the year 2000? Cricket, anybody? It was December 13th, over a month from where we are right now. So he didn't concede at all. Yet President Trump is supposed to roll over and play dead, man, and just be happy about it. Nonsense. Representative Jim Banks, Republican of Indiana, a staunch Trump administration ally, tweeted about the letter on Saturday. If you're just tuning in the show, what we're talking about is a letter signed by 38 members of Congress asking Bill Barr to intercede on this, get some Department of Justice and FBI investigation. But this is what Mr. Banks said. He said, I've joined 38 of my colleagues in writing a letter to AG Bill Barr requesting he investigate claims of voter fraud and make sure only all legal votes are counted in this election. That is extremely important. And I'm going to keep repeating this over the coming days. Nothing short of an audit, or what you want to call a validation, is acceptable. Nothing else will do, because a recount doesn't do much. A recount simply recounts the ballots that they already counted. Now, I'm not saying they won't change a few things, and they may need to count some ballots that, by the way, hadn't totally been counted in some really close states, and those are like overseas military ballots and provisional ballots and those kind of things. I'm not saying that they won't have an impact. But what really needs to happen for the American people, if Joe Biden is ultimately, God help us, become the real president-elect and ultimately the president, then for us to have any chance of, quote, coming together, and you know what I think about some of that, and I'll expand on that in a moment, it can't happen unless these votes are validated, unless there's an audit. And by that, I mean they literally need to make sure that all the rules and regulations that were, if they were done by the state legislatures, are adhered to. Signatures, timing of coming in, postmarks, all of that kind of stuff. Because right now, there are some suspects in this. I don't know if you heard this or not, and I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but she's the current attorney for General Kelly. Not, is it Kelly? No. I'm sorry, General Flynn. I'm sorry, Mike Flynn. And she's the one that basically got him off from the injustice that was in. She wasn't his original attorney. She is a really sharp lady. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right this moment. But she talked about that there's literally over 400, I want to say she said 450,000, but it was over 400,000 ballots scattered out among especially the kind of bellwether or toss-up states, if you want to call them that, that have only one vote on them, and that is for Joe Biden. Just one vote. Now, I'm not saying they're fraudulent. I'm not saying that, but it's certainly suspect. And here's something else I want to say. I keep hearing this, oh, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? There's tons of evidence out there, but circumstantial evidence is extremely important. The media would have you believe that unless Donald Trump and his lawyers come out and just lay their entire case out, like on 60 Minutes or something, that they don't have a case. That is nonsense. Any kind of case, whether it's civil or criminal or anything else, literally most everyone starts with some type of circumstantial evidence, something that points to there may be an issue here. It is not until you have an investigation that you uncover evidence that is prosecutable, really. I mean, think about any kind of trial, whether it's civil or criminal or everything in between, that you immediately have enough evidence to make a conviction or determination without any investigation at all. There is literally almost zero chance of that happening. The investigation happens because you have a suspicion of a crime, and then you produce evidence if there is any. So the fact that they haven't just laid it all out doesn't mean squat, and the fact that the media just they want us to just go home, get back in front of the TV and watch football. That's what they want. My Gators won, by the way. Go Gators. But nothing short of an audit will do. Now, it could be limited. It could be a limited audit. They could limit it to certain states if they choose to. The ones that are close. It'd be like a handful, 5 or 6 states, something like that. They could limit it to that. They don't have to, because there's no reason they couldn't be doing it across the nation. And I really believe this is our one chance. And I got a good friend of mine, Cliff. Good morning. Howdy, how are you? We've been talking about this. Give him a little shout out because, man, he has been working hard locally down in South Florida for Donald Trump. And I think he represents a lot of what people are thinking there. And one thing about it, no matter what happens with the presidency, we need to take this chance right now to remedy our system, not just for Republicans, but for Americans. Joe Biden said he wants to be the president of all Americans. If that's true, Joe, then you need to call on an audit of these votes. If you really want to be a leader and bring us together, the only chance you have of doing that, sir, is if 72 million people that voted for Donald Trump actually feel like it was a fair election. Absent that, good luck, man. Good luck. But it could be limited to states. Let me also tell you this. It's going to take massive amounts of volunteers to do even recounts, let alone validation. So if you're in a state and you hear that they're going to do some type of recount or some type of audit, contact your local Republican Party. You can do it as well, Democrat, if you want to, your Democratic Party, and volunteer to be an observer or to help out, because it is going to take an army of volunteers to get this done. I've done it before here in Florida. I volunteered back in 2018 when we had a recount with the Senate election that got Mr. Scott elected, and in our governor's race that Ron DeSantis won. It was really close. I participated in that recount, and I can tell you, even in a little old Alachua County, it took probably 100 volunteers to actually get that done. There are paid workers. So if you have a chance, you want to know something you can do, there's something you can do right now, right there. Contact your local Republican Party, and they will hook you up. All right, moving along here. Let me see. The letter, they said, the congressman said, it's also important that the process be completely transparent so that the American people will have full confidence in the result. Amen. And I keep saying it, anything, in my view, less than an audit. A recount's not going to do it. An audit to make sure that every legal vote was actually counted, that's the only thing that's going to work. And it will be impossible to accept if it's not. Now, I want to play you a couple of videos here. One we've played multiple times, and this was just a couple of months ago, because you keep hearing that Donald Trump should concede. He needs to go ahead and concede right now. And I told you on Thursday and Friday of last week that one of my great fears is exactly what has happened. That the media is going, as soon as Biden is over the 270 figure that they can, quote, call it, the media is going to put that number up there, or whatever that number is, round the clock, and put a lot of pressure on President Trump to just accept it and go along. They're going to call that he's destroying the country, that he's doing all this. They conveniently forget that Democrats have been demonizing Donald Trump since before he actually took office, and even in this election process. Let's hear from none other than Hillary Clinton about whether or not a candidate in 2020 should concede. Check it out.
They have a couple of scenarios that they're looking toward. One is messing up absentee balloting so that they then get maybe a narrow advantage in the Electoral College on Election Day. Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch, and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
I agree with you 100%, Hillary. Count every legal vote. And I would just fill in the blank there that Donald Trump should not concede. I don't think Joe Biden should concede. I think they should both carry this out until all these legal questions are answered. There's plenty of time for this. Contrary to what the media, including Fox News, would have you believe, by the way, the media does not call the elections. There is a constitutional process for that, and it includes legal challenges are certainly viable, and that is the system we have, especially in close elections. Now, I keep hearing this about legitimacy and everything about Joe Biden. And I chimed in on a Facebook page, and they ended up kind of kicking me out of the conversation. And all I basically said, well, what's a Biden White House going to be like? And I just put depends, because that's what he's going to be wearing. And of course, that started a whole big conversation. And I told them in that, I said, I tell you what, I'll make you a deal. I will give Joe Biden just as much respect as you guys gave Donald Trump. I'll give him the same amount. That sounds fair to me. But let me play this. This is Chuck Todd interviewing the late John Lewis about Donald Trump and becoming the 45th president of the United States. Check it out.
Forged relationships with many presidents. Do you plan on trying to forge a relationship with Donald Trump?
You know, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in trying to work with people. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president. Why is that?
I think the Russians participated in helping this man get elected, and they helped destroy the candidacy of Hillary Clinton. I don't plan to attend the inauguration. It will be the first one that I miss since I've been in the Congress. You cannot be at home with something that you feel that is wrong.
That's going to send a big message to a lot of people in this country that you don't believe he's a legitimate president.
I think there was a conspiracy on the part of the Russians and others to help him get elected. That's not right. That's not fair. That's not the open democratic process.
The open democratic process. Now, you notice that Chuck Todd never once says, well, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? And there's plenty of evidence about Russian collusion. There's a ton of evidence. They spent, what, $40 million on the evidence. And what did they conclude, Mr. late, great John Lewis? And I hate to pick on the dead, but who invoked his name just the other day? None other than Kamala Harris talked about him, right? So I guess it's fair game. There's plenty of evidence about Russian collusion. The unfortunate thing is for people like Lewis and the Democrats, the overwhelming evidence, and there's a ton of it, is that no one colluded with the Russians, including Donald Trump. Mueller came out and said that there was no Russian collusion between Donald Trump or any other American, period. He said it at his press conference, he said it in the report, and he said it in his testimony before Congress. No collusion. Yet, here you go. They're still talking about that, right? So what did John Lewis also say in that video? I thought he said, well, you can't something accept what you can't take to heart or to home or something like that. Yeah, I understand that. You're right, sir. That's why we have to have an audit of these election results, because I'm telling you right now that the Trump supporters, by a big chunk of them, maybe not all 72 million, but a huge chunk of us Trump chumps, say that fast, we're not going to accept this if we don't get some type of audit. We're going to feel like it's stolen. And you know what exactly that means? My buddy Cliff also said this. You can tell, you'll be able to tell if the election is turning for Donald Trump when they start boarding up the windows again. If you noticed, all the boards came off. So all this violence in the street had nothing to do with social justice and everything. If you can't see it, ladies and gentlemen, this was a total manipulation. I'm not saying everybody out there. Some people just took advantage of the situation and, cheat by mail, loot, and give us hell, do their Christmas shopping early, Black Friday every day, that kind of thing. And there were legitimate protesters that got overwhelmed. But if you can't see that this was totally orchestrated, I mean, just look what's happening now. Do you really believe that Black Lives Matter and the people burning up everything just automatically went, oh, manna from heaven, we've gotten a vision, and it's Joe Biden? I mean, really? You really expect this? They're asking us to believe an awful lot. But without evidence that this election was fair, how are we supposed to accept it? I just don't understand how that. Back to this article. They asked for Barr to immediately respond to the following questions. This is the letter from the Freedom Caucus, basically, in Congress. It says, what are you doing to ensure the integrity of the voting and counting process right now? Well, that's a good question. And as I said at the top of the show, I also have a question. What was done from the beginning? Because if Donald Trump ultimately does not prevail in this, yeah, he's going to be cheated out of it. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But one thing, you can't totally blame the Democrats, because I still believe, and we'll probably talk about it more as time goes on, I do believe the ball was dropped early in this process when Congress even made, the Republicans in Congress even made a report that this was going to happen. But what did they do about it? Not much from what I can see, including, and I hate to say it, including the Trump administration. I think they dropped the ball on this early on, and we are where we are, and we got to deal with where we are. We can talk about how to fix it later, but I believe without a doubt that Matt Gaetz is right when he says, regardless of how this turns out, we need to have this audit for a couple of reasons. One is we need to determine who the winner is so we have any chance at being a unified country. It's a slim chance, but to have any, we got to have that. And plus, if we don't true the vote right now, and there's an organization I mentioned a couple of times on Friday, and I still would recommend you checking them out, truethevote.org. Check that out. That if we don't take the chance right now, the opportunity to validate this and clean up our election process And Democrats should be for this too. Americans should be for this too. We need to clean up our election process. And this is the best time and perhaps the only time to do it. Because as Matt Gaetz says, and this Georgia race is coming up with these two potential senators to claim the hold on to U.S. Senate, or for the Democrats to take it. God help us if that actually happens. Well, we can't allow the vote to be exactly the way it was in Georgia. And I'm not even talking about the result. I'm talking about how the votes were counted and everything else if we expect for that to win. So there is a lot at stake beyond just President Trump. The future of our election process is on the line. Will you commit? This is what the letter also asks. Will you commit to Bill Barr? Will you commit to using all the resources at your disposal to ensure that only legal votes are being counted and being counted in a fully transparent manner immediately? Cheat by mail is real, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, like I told you the other day, I listened to Fox News, and they had that McCallum, I guess her name, the lady that does the story, and she's always with Brett Barry, Martha McCallum, I think. Well, she was asking for evidence. Where's the evidence? I already told you about evidence. It's part of the investigation. But she said, where's the evidence? At the same time, she's telling a story about her neighbor in New York that got 5 ballots mailed to him. There's your evidence, Martha, right there, man. But over 400,000 ballots with just Biden's name. Biden got 8 million more votes than Obama. 8 million more. Apparently, Joe Biden is the greatest candidate in the history of the world, right? Hillary Clinton was the most qualified ever. But Joe Biden, without a doubt, if he holds on to this, he was the greatest candidate to ever live. Because who could hide in their basement for months on end and then just all of a sudden got more votes than Obama? Is it too late? I don't know. We got to keep fighting. I'm willing to fight. As I reminded early in the show, Al Gore conceded the election when he lost to Bush in December, I think, 13th. Check it out. But is it too late? I don't know. But I want to play this video right here. This is Donald Trump Jr., a very short snippet of something he said a couple of days ago that I think is vital for all of us who support Trump, who support this nation, who are thinking about still supporting the Republican Party. Listen to what Donald Trump Jr. says. Check it out.
I think the Democrats are used to this from a Republican Party that hasn't had a backbone. You're not going to see that this time around. That party is gone, and anyone that doesn't fight like that should go with it.
Amen, man. I am with you, Donald Trump Jr. If you're not willing to fight right now, then go away. Go away. If you're not willing to fight. Now is the time to fight. Not next year. We should have fought earlier, but we can only fight when we're in the fight. And now is the time. I honestly believe, ladies and gentlemen, that yes, Donald Trump, I think Matt Gaetz was right on. Check that video out. Maybe I'll post it up again on my Facebook site. He's at spot on, Matt Gaetz, as he usually is. And certainly in this case, when Donald Trump has reinvented the Republican Party. Now, there's going to be resistance from Republicans about actually changing to the way that worked, who delivered 72 million votes, because they're idiots. All they care about is they're short-sighted. They just care about their turn at the trough and holding on to their own power. And I'm talking about Republicans. What we have to do, regardless of what happens for President Trump, and I'm all for pushing this to the end and ultimately victory for Donald Trump, so don't misunderstand me. But regardless, even if Donald Trump can pull this out, and if anybody can do it, it is DJT. You got that right here from JMT. But regardless of what happens, we need to take over the Republican Party completely. Because without it, we got no I don't think a third party is going to work. Not in the short term. It would just empower the Democrats. So we need to focus on Donald Trump, getting him through, focus on truing this vote up, because it needs to be done for all Americans, regardless of party. If not now, when? If not who? If not us, who? Who? And it's going to take all of us. We got to volunteer, all that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's move along to this. It's kind of a God help us thing. if Biden actually wins. This is from The Hill. Biden will call governors, mayors about mask mandate. Now, there's the mask I think Biden ought to wear. But I want to play this short video before we get into this, the rest of this story. This is Joe Biden because he came out, originally said he was for a national mask mandate. Then he backed off of it. And I want you to hear in his own words, lying Biden about why he may not do a mask mandate, even though he's planning on doing one. Check it out.
Whether the federal government could issue such a mandate. I don't think constitutionally they could, so I wouldn't issue a mandate.
There you go. Good enough. He said it would be unconstitutional, right? Unconstitutional. So that little thing that we like to call the U.S. Constitution is going to get in these Democrats' way all the time. They don't believe in it anymore, flat out. They've proved that over the whole Trump administration and certainly even over this campaign. The Democrats, and I'm not talking about all Democrats, I'm talking about the progressives that have taken over your party. They don't believe in the Constitution anymore. And I think the American people saw that is why it looks like they may hold on to the Senate Republicans, and they crushed some in the House. And they're still picking up seats as this count goes on. And it's going to be interesting to see if Pelosi can even hold on to power, which is a whole nother story. But that thing called the Constitution is going to get in their way. And I've been telling you since day one of this election that the election itself was bigger than Donald Trump, because the Constitution is what is on the line, and the Constitution is what may save Trump's presidency. Either way, if we're going to have this word unity, which basically means we cave into the Republicans, to the Democrats. That's what unity means. We go to their way. Well, the only way we can ever truly have unity is if we return to the Constitution and agree that it is the principal foundation document of our nation. Because Democrats, the current bunch, they believe that the Constitution empowers government, which is absolutely the opposite. The Constitution empowers the people and protects them from the overreach of government. And we used to all believe that. Even we may disagree on certain things, but we fundamentally believe that. The reason why we can't unify, forget Trump or Biden, is because the Democrats no longer believe in the founding principles of this nation. Matter of fact, they're telling us that we're wrong and that this nation was founded basically in evil, I suppose. I don't know. President-elect Biden will personally call on governors around the country to enact mask mandates in their states once taking office next year, according to NBC News report on Sunday. So he's ready to be the real Joe. We're getting ready to see we're seeing the real Joe now. But not Joe Biden. Hey, I think Joe Biden is gone. I don't know what's left of the man. He's an empty shell. But you know what he seems to be channeling? His inner Joseph Stalin, man. Check out that meme and tell me if that is not as true today as it was when Stalin first uttered it. Voters don't count. The people counting the vote is what matters. That's pretty much that. Has it ever been truer than now? We need to audit this vote. We need to believe in the results of this election. And we're never going to do it if we don't get a full accounting. I can tell you that right now. What's going to happen? I don't know. Maybe too late. But our republic is more important than either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, in my opinion. And we need to audit this vote so that we can have a reasonable conclusion. Because if we audit this vote and it comes out that Joe Biden somehow miraculously was the greatest candidate ever and beat Donald Trump, I will be the first one to say, hey, let's move on and keep fighting. Don't misunderstand me. I'm going to keep fighting because I don't believe in what the Democrats believe in anymore, not the ones running the party now. So that's not what I'm saying. Matter of fact, just the opposite. This thing is bigger than Donald Trump. It is for the very soul of our nation and the U.S. Constitution. But I can accept the results if I believe they're honest results. And right now, I don't see, talking about evidence, I don't see any evidence that these results were honest. A Biden campaign official told the network, talking about NBC, that governors who resist the incoming president's request will see Biden pressure mayors of cities in their respective states to enact mandates at the local level. I'll tell you one thing that's becoming really clear. Our cities are dying. Do you think they're going to get revitalized under Biden? I don't think so. Potentially setting him up, talking about Biden, for a confrontation with Republican governors around the U.S. So he is going to go against them no matter what and kind of circumvent them even if they stand up to him. So Billy Bob tells me that we've heard this or seen this before. I wonder where. Right there, baby. Star Trek, the Borg. He even looks a little like Joe Biden. I hate to curse. Of course, we know that he's a liberal and the real actor there. But resistance is futile, man. And then, of course, we've seen it during the election. And this is why people are bailing. I want to do deference to algorithm before I show this meme. But check out this other Borg meme. If we can't get it? Oh, okay. It's not. Anyway, it was Mark Zuckerberg in a Facebook Borg. Somehow we lost that. Billy Bob, what happened? I'm pretty sure I put it up there, but maybe not. Anyway, it showed, you can take that one down. It showed Mark Zuckerberg in a Borg outfit. Because we have seen one thing for sure. The mainstream media, the progressive leftists, the never Trumpers, all backed by social media, have all been against Donald Trump. And he still got 72 million votes. Said the official, according to NBC, if a governor declines, he'll go to the mayors in the state and ask them to lead. In many states, there is a capacity of mayors to institute mandates. So he's going to ask the mayors to lead. What he's going to ask for is comply and unity. As I said, I pledge to you right now, should God help us, Biden get reelected or get elected. I don't think he'll even survive to reelection, but get elected. I will give him the same amount of respect as the Democrats gave Donald Trump. So bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, Georgia is critical coming up no matter what. It's critical for the president. It's critical for holding on to the Senate, which we got to. This election, I've been telling you all along, is an election of tyranny versus freedom, freedom versus tyranny, however you want to do it. It's still that way, with or without reelecting President Trump. Without him, it's even more so. Absolutely. And one of the things, if we have the same system in place in Georgia that we had this time around with the cheat by mail votes, and they talk about absentee votes aren't the issue. It's the cheat by mail votes. So if we had the same system, if we don't audit what's happening in Georgia, then we're going to lose those Senate seats because they will somehow miraculously find enough ballots to win. And they talk about here in this thing, let me check my time. We're pretty much out of time. But Biden's going to shut it down. I've showed you that video before. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go directly to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, share it with others. Remember our YouTube channel, John Martin Talks, Big Daddy Unlimited, our sponsor. Check out above the video and you'll see a link to there. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation and President Trump, because he certainly has earned it and needs it. But as I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day.